of partner affect your long-term goals, including like really staying alive?
Yeah, marriage is a potentially very dangerous situation. I mean, think about it. You marry someone and you have every expectation and hope that this person is going to be who she or he says they are. And you know what happens. A lot of us found out that didn't work out. You may be married to somebody who's just a bad person, an evil person. You may be married to somebody who's there for the money or the free ride. You may be there with somebody who ends up with a horrendous disease, no way you could have known that. Or even more tragic, maybe the most tragic of all, has some sort of a genetic anomaly which is passed on to your children. You may be married to someone who turns out to be an addict, and then addiction becomes part of your children's lives, and then becomes part of your life. So the person you marry is the most important decision you're ever going to make in your life. That's why if you're not sure, that's another reason to call me and have your free 1-hour consultation, because if you're not sure, you probably aren't sure for a reason. And there are 8 billion of us on the planet Earth. And these dating sites are all over the world. So you really have choices now. You can't say you live in a small town and there are only 3 bachelors, or there are only 3 single women. It doesn't fly anymore. This is not the prairie and this is not 1758. So you have choices now.
I like that. No desperation, Susan. Just the perfect decision. A perfect life decision, hopefully. Well, I can see that it's time for us to go into a clip, and I wonder if you'd share with us what this is going to review.
Well, it's on a similar topic, and you've got to watch this clip because it's going to give you more information, and it's from a show that Gigi and I did a little while ago, and we really hope that at the end of this clip, you've enjoyed it and you've learned a little bit more. See you soon. If you're at a restaurant and you're having a really nice meal and you're saying, oh, this is really delicious, and I said to you, wonderful, would you like to have that as your only meal for the rest of your life? What are you talking about? Well, that's what living with somebody is for couples who are monogamous. So you might really love a good juicy steak, or you might really love any one of the fabulous Indian dishes, etc. But the question you have to ask yourself, do you want this partner, and only this partner, every single day for the rest of your life? Now, if you can say, I think I do, I really think I do, and your partner says the same thing, then you're probably ready to live together. A couple of conversations you can have that we'll talk about tonight, but you're probably ready. But if you start to want to jump up from the restaurant table and go screaming and running out the door, then that's a different answer.
So those food fights would qualify to move on, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, now I'd like to explore this. What's the real difference in pressure between spending weekends together and actually living together?
Well, I don't know about you, but after a great weekend with somebody, I used to need to go home and sleep. So if I had to go to work Monday morning, I would come right home from work and I would sleep. Really, the effort I put into having a fabulous weekend was exhausting for me. And I had a big career and now a big weekend too. It was just overwhelming. Not to mention all the beauty things you do on your own to get ready for the weekend or the important date or the hot date or the event. So it's very, very different. Living with somebody is very, very different from just being with them and showing them the best side of yourself.
That's the truth. What a reality check it can become. Well, let's explore this. What are some of those expectations that partners really have about living together that do not work?
Well, it's interesting. Women seem to have an expectation that their partner is going to be as helpful around the house on a day-to-day basis as the partner might have been on a couple of dates or even a long-term dating relationship. And the chances of that happening are very slim. And though there's a cute expression, honey-do list, there are a very small percentage of guys who are really excited about getting that list every day or every Friday. You know, and over time, the things they might have done, like my friend Michael, he went on a date and the next day the woman calls him and said, my closet fell down. And he rushed over with his tool belt and got into a terrible relationship that was bad when it was happening. It was worse when it ended. So, you know, even here's somebody who was willing to do whatever it took, and it was still, you know, a disaster because other parts of the relationship were a huge problem. In the case of, you know, the flip side, the man may have had wonderful hors d'oeuvres when he came to you, and you always had his favorite wine, and maybe you invited over for dinner, maybe you spend days and days cooking his favorite dishes. Now you're living with him. You have a career. You have to rest. You have to get some sleep. Where are you going to find the time to take such good care of him? It's a challenge.
Yeah.
We've been reminiscing about all the things we did that we are so glad we don't do anymore. Gigi used to cook meals for her family. 6 nights a week? 5 nights a week?
Usually 7, to tell you the truth.
Oh my God. See, in New York City, that's against the law. You're required by law in New York City to take your wife out at least 2 nights a week. I'm not kidding. I'm serious. And I never did that. Wow.
Oh, the things that can make a difference.
Oh,
Save our energy for other enjoyable moments.
absolutely.
Well, now let's get back to business here. I know that March 20th is the big proposal day, and I know that 2 men proposed to you on your first date, and so you just have to tell us about one of those.
You know, if you're watching this and you're a man, I don't want you to feel terrified, because I'm not raising the bar. I'm not saying this is normal or appropriate or even desirable. It's just a funny story that really did happen to me. If you're a woman, I want you to really pay attention, because the point is, it did happen. That summer, 2 men really did propose to me on first dates. And what it takes is to find a guy who wants to get married, who's looking for a wife. So if you're dating someone who's not looking to get married and not looking for a wife, then that's something that you forgot to factor into the equation. Because if you only date men who are looking to get married, then you're going to get a marriage proposal pretty quickly, but maybe not as fast as I did. So I met this guy at an EST event, if any of you remember EST, which is now Landmark Forum. And he was an attractive guy and I think a dentist in Connecticut. And I lived in New York City, and he asked me out, and I said, great. And so we had a dinner date, and he took me to a lovely restaurant. The waiter asked what we'd like to drink, and we each ordered a glass of wine. And as the waiter delivered the big, beautiful wine goblet to each of us, he started to stand up. And I said to him, please don't. He said to me, you have no idea what I'm going to do. I said, I do. He said, how could you possibly know what I'm going to do? I was going to propose to you. I said, yes, I know, and please don't. Now, how in the world did I know, right? There's just a look that they get on their face. I can't say anything else, but if you'd had 16 men propose to you, you would know. There's a look. It's the look. And if you don't want that look on that guy's face, then you've got to do the nice thing and prevent him from getting down on one knee. There's no benefit to letting a man get down on one knee if you don't want him to propose to you. Do anything you can to keep him in his chair, because it's the right thing to do. Don't want to embarrass anybody, because he will one day propose to somebody else. So you don't want to ruin this experience for him, okay? So be kind. That's the number one thing.
That was sweet, Susan. Absolutely. And I guess he got the picture right away, right? Well, how about telling us well, please let us know about a fun proposal that you can suggest that did not happen to you.
You know, there's a company that sends me emails that's based in Paris, and they do fantasy marriage proposal events. Very, very cool. You know, event at the top of the Eiffel Tower, a marriage proposal in a hot air balloon over Paris, something in one of the bateaux mouches going down the Seine. Really fabulous stuff. They also do them all over France. And so if you're somebody who has the money for it and has the imagination for it, and you're going to propose to somebody who has a great sense of humor and a wonderful, wonderful, adventuresome soul, then you want to do something fabulous. A really fantastic marriage proposal that you'll tell your grandchildren about. And there are enough websites nowadays that you don't have to come up with anything on your own.
I like that. And you remember it forever. It really matters. Now, is there a connection between the more fabulous weddings, expensive and all that, and the length of the marriage?
Well, you know, Los Angeles is divorce central. You know, it's what I call it, the divorce capital of the world. And you know how much they spend on those weddings. You know, really, really sad to see somebody, even the Kardashians, you know, the one who got all of the things paid for by everybody else, but still that was like a $7 million Montecito wedding. And then at the end of the day, the neighbors in Montecito complained about the noise, and they forced them to stop doing the music at like 10 o'clock at night, which is like, you would think somebody would have figured this out in advance, that the $1 million wedding planner would have known this was going to be a problem. But anyway, the truth is that these huge $1 million weddings tend to be less successful, not because of the wedding, but because the focus is on externals. The purpose of a wedding is to merge two into one. I perform weddings. And so the purpose of performing a wedding is to make sure before the date that the couple is really in sync with each other, that there is a deep experience of love, which you may have heard me say, when her needs getting met are as important to him as his own needs getting met, and vice versa. That's love, and that's a true couple. Those are people who should get married. The rest of us should just wait.
That explains the ultimate connection, Susan. I love that. And how important is it for a man to have the ring with him when he does propose?
It all depends on who your bride is. There was a great Sex and the City episode, and she was so offended by the ring, she didn't want to marry the guy. Now, of course, that's very superficial. But Sex and the City was all about fashion and superficiality. So honestly, if your fiancé-to-be is somebody who is meticulous about everything she puts on her body, then you know you don't want to buy the ring without her being involved. So you would have a photo inside of a velvet box of a beautiful big ring. If it's someone who isn't about aesthetics, but maybe has an heirloom, my best friend had an heirloom ring that was her grandmother's. That meant everything to her. So Sinclair proposed to Linnea, and then he had the ring reset. That's another very traditional thing that you can do. But some people, you can ask the best friend to pick out the ring. Maybe they've been thinking about this for the last 20 years. So it's a pretty, good bet that the best friend knows, is it going to be a platinum setting? Is it going to be a white gold, yellow gold? Is it going to be a pear shape? Is it going to be a round, et cetera, et cetera? So it all depends on how well you know your girlfriend. And if you don't know your girlfriend, well, this is a perfect opportunity to get to know her before you propose. And then you have those three options for the ring.
Nice. A little bit of detective work and they can figure it out.
You bet.
Now, I know that one summer 4 men proposed to you. And one of them proposed to you over the phone, right?
Yeah. So crazy. I mean, it was so crazy. It was a former boyfriend who I hadn't seen in 6 months, and he was in California. And he called me, and he proposed to me over the phone. And I tried to downplay it. David, that's very sweet, and David, that's very kind of you, and whatever I said at the time. Lots of empathy for David, because I wasn't going to marry him even if he was still in New York. I wasn't going to marry him for 53 different reasons. And it was quite an experience. And of course, it was not the most romantic thing in the world, but it made it very easy to say no, because now he got to save face, and I certainly didn't have this misery, deer in the headlights guy looking at me. So I don't recommend you do it, because somebody proposing to you over the phone is somebody who is not courageous enough to ask you the question and have you say yes or no. So don't do it.
Yes, nothing like that personal connection on such an important issue. Now, I know, Susan, there was another guy who proposed to you the same summer, and you also hadn't seen him in 6 months.
It was
Tell
very
us.
weird. The weirdest thing about that summer is that I went to see a psychic whose name was Frederick something, a very famous psychic. He's not alive anymore. And he told me that I would be dating 5 men who would propose to me, and none of them, no, I take it back. I would have 5 marriage proposals that summer, and none of them was my boyfriend. That's what he told me. And I thought he was crazy, and it was true. So this was a guy that I hadn't seen in 6 months, and he called me up, asked me out to dinner, and I liked him. And I wasn't sure if I should go out with him again. I hadn't seen him in 6 months. We had dated over the previous summer, but he convinced me. He was a very smart guy and very persuasive, and he convinced me to, have dinner with him. And then he was like so charming and so perfect, and something was off. Like, he wasn't that charming when I was dating him. What's going on? It was like too much good behavior. And at the bar, before our table was even ready, it was weird. Something was just weird. And then I looked at him and I noticed he had that look. He had that look. And I said very quickly, I had to change the topic, like, get me out of here, So I said to him, I don't think you're thinking about me. I remember you had told me that marriage is like a virus that men get every 5 years. So I think what's happened is you've come down with this flu, and you thought of all the women you knew, and it seemed that I might be the right one. But I'm sure you've been dating someone in the 6 months that I haven't seen you, so I have a feeling she may actually be the one. And he did eventually marry her.
Oh, that was a redirect.
Absolutely. It was a brilliant redirect, if I don't say so myself.
Oh my gosh, I know that you've had another guy that you did a redirect on, and that guy, well, he wasn't the only one, but tell us about that.
One of the men that I really adored, really, really adored, who was a bad boy, all in caps with neon lights, finally proposed to me. Actually proposed to me pretty quickly. He proposed to me really, really fast, but I already knew he was, you couldn't get this guy to be where he said he was going to be, when he said he was going to be there, for all the money in the world. You just could never do it. And you couldn't get this guy to be monogamous, no matter who or what you were offering him. Monogamy was not an option. And so when he again came back again to propose to me, to try to convince me at this point to marry him, I remember we were sitting at my kitchen table in New York. I had not accepted his proposal in India, and he was a guy from Canada. And now he's proposing to me in my kitchen. I don't have any place to go now. I mean, it's in my home, right? And I said to him, I don't want to be the person who's stuck at home in Canada while you're gallivanting around India and Thailand with another version of me. You know, I'd rather be the me having fun in all of the, you know, the Asian ports of call than somebody else be sitting home in Canada waiting for you to not show up. So I said, it seems to me that that's the person for you to marry. I'm sure you have somebody sitting in Toronto right this minute who's wondering where you are. So I would say, get on the phone and propose to her. And he did, and they had 5 children. In like 7 years, they had 5 children. God.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And it could have been you.
Oh, no, it could not have been me.
And I know that you have a favorite proposal that almost never happened. Can you tell us about this?
Yes. Well, you know, I adored Alexis. I just adored him. And I dated him for 2 years, and then I had to break up with him because he was impossible. He was another one of these impossible bad boys. But now 12 years went by, and now he was a great salesman. So he convinced me to give it another shot. And we were facing the millennium, and I was renting a house on the Hollywood Hills. And the Hollywood sign was right across from my house. You know, you would look out this 40-foot deck that I had, and there was the Hollywood sign. It was quite fabulous. And they said that they were going to light it up with neon for New Year's Eve. So poor Alexis had the flu. He was so sick that as we were sitting there watching the Hollywood sign light up at midnight, he was so sick he actually fell off his chair. I mean, that's how bad a flu he had. And I had just been on the phone with his doctor earlier in the day because it looked like he wasn't going to make it. I mean, he was convinced he might die. So the joke was, later that night when he actually proposed to me, I said, are you proposing to me because you really, now you've decided you want to spend the rest of your life with me, or because you've decided your life isn't going to last that long? So I did accept him because I could not say no. Common sense told me I needed to say no, but I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. So I got engaged to him. I went through most of the process, and then thank God I came to my senses, and I did not ultimately marry him because it would have been a horror.
Yeah, disastrous.
For me. Great for him.
Oh, yes.
But horrible for me.
Oh my gosh, I get excited hearing about him. I don't know why.
He was fabulous. Fabulous guy.
Well, I know, I understand that you do perform marriages, Susan, and that you often write poems for the couple. Do you ever help them out with the proposal?
Yes, listen, I write poems in English and French. I write vows, you know, for if they want me to. I don't do anything except marry you if you want to do all of that yourself. But one of my favorite proposals, one of my favorite clients who've gotten married, and I've had a lot of them, was wonderful, wonderful Ross and Connie. And they called me from Radio City Music Hall 5 seconds after he proposed to her, down on one knee in the mezzanine, and everybody around them was hooting and hollering, and he was so cute. After he'd given her this gorgeous, gorgeous ring and she said yes, they called me and shared the news with me. So that was really one of the most wonderful things, because they're such a fantastic couple. And I had worked with him, he was a client, and I'd worked with him to find just exactly the wonderful woman that he was looking for, and he found just a spectacular woman.
Another wonderful story, another success.
That's right, and you can have that too. Anybody can find a great partner if they really want to.
Yeah, what touched my heart recently was Nancy Reagan passing,
Yes.
and that whole situation of the love letters that she's going to display.
Yes.
And I mean,
So
the words, the power of that was just amazing.
And interestingly enough, if you look at the early pictures of Ronnie and Nancy Reagan, he was a major, major, major good-looking guy, and she was not. She was a very simple, pixie-looking woman, which was his type because he'd been married, you know, to Jane Wyman before that. So he liked a particular type. But you look at those pictures of Nancy Reagan, When I'm talking about making yourself the very best you can possibly be, Nancy Reagan is a perfect example. And I used to design for Adolfo, and Nancy really wore most of Adolfo's clothes during all the years in the White House. So she was a fabulous woman who knew how to make the best of herself. And she just got lucky that Ronnie fell in love with her. But if you want that kind of a life, most of you really have to do some work. You have to make sure that you are putting out the vibe and the look and the verbiage and everything else so that a man or a woman can fall deeply in love with you and have it last a lifetime.
And I love the fact they kept it going. They kept it going.
Yes.
A love
Yes.
affair that they both
Yes.
helped with.
Yes, and he was a very monogamous guy. I mean, he loved jelly beans. He only ate jelly beans, and he was only with Nancy for all those years. So she got lucky.
Yes. Well, thank you, Susan. And for our viewers, I know that you can see that having these skills, once again, you can have the results that you want. And if you don't have enough skills, again, there is a chance that you will feel disappointed by your outcome, whether or not it's proposal day or any other day. And it's always best to decide what your goal is regard to your, of course, partner. And is this really someone that you actually want to marry, and how you want to move forward? And if so, please take the opportunity to have a free 1-hour session with Susan. It will give her a lot of joy to help you and change your life and all of your relationships. And